in the 1980s, the Cold War arms race was ended in less than 2 years. The decision to eliminate all nuclear weapons could be taken in a similarly short period of time.
This is now effectively the tomb of the Anas Arafat family. 13 family members, including his mother and father. Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to the Struggle Video News. We start our program today talking about nuclear weapons. It's traditional on the left in early August to talk about the nuclear annihilation of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and to consider how we can stop the new nuclear arms race. I have a brand new interview on the subject with Ira Helfand. He's a leader in 2 organizations that each won a Nobel Peace Prize. Also, more details about the decimation in Gaza of the family of Anas Arafat, and about the continued and worsening starvation. Also, updates on the way British police are reacting to the banning of Palestine action. Closing with news about the Handala, the boat activists hope to sail into Gaza. All on the Struggle video today. On August 7th, Ira Helfand will speak in Windsor, Connecticut at Ralph Nader's Museum of American Tort Law. I interviewed Helfand on July 23rd on a number of issues, including movies about nuclear weapons that are coming out soon. I'll be speaking to Ira Helfand. He's a practicing medical doctor and member of the steering group of the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, which is ICAN for short. And that organization was recipient of the 2017 Nobel Peace Prize. He's also past president of the International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War, recipient of the 1985 Nobel Peace Prize. On Thursday, August 7th of this year, 2025, he'll be speaking at the American Museum of Tort Law in Winsted, Connecticut at 11 a.m. Good morning.
Good morning. Good to talk with you.
So the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists once said you were introduced at a meeting as the quietest, scariest person on the planet. Scariest, obviously, because you talk about the realities of nuclear war. We'll get into that, of course, but I wanted to start more quietly. So could we talk about your background? You're a medical doctor. Where did you study?
I went to medical school at Albert Einstein College of Medicine in the Bronx and did my medical training in internal medicine after that at Mount Auburn Hospital in Cambridge, Mass, and then back at Montefiore and also in the Bronx.
And what is your specialty?
I trained as an internist, but I worked for most of my career as an emergency room doc.
Now, I remember somehow learning about atom bombs in 7th grade back in the duck and cover era. Do you recall when you first learned about nuclear weapons?
I really don't remember a specific moment. I mean, they were just always sort of there. I do have a memory when I was very young, like maybe 3 or 4, of sitting with my father, and he was looking at a copy of Time magazine that was announcing, I think, the first hydrogen bomb test. I don't know what that meant, but I just remember the big picture of the mushroom cloud. But it was just always there for people of my age. I was born in 1949, and so growing up in that era, the bomb was just a part of our life.
Right, and we had the Walt Disney film, Your Friend the Atom.
Right.
Now, as I understand it, your opposition to nuclear first had to do with nuclear power plants.
Right. When I was an intern, a group of doctors in Boston started meeting to talk about the medical dangers posed by the nuclear power industry. And we started a group, an organization, and at our third or fourth meeting, we learned that there had been a group some years earlier called Physicians for Social Responsibility, which had been concerned with nuclear weapons. And we merged with that group, and they really hadn't been active, but we sort of reactivated them. And some of the leaders in that group told us that, nuclear power is a real problem, but the bigger problem is that posed by nuclear weapons. And they had published a series of articles back in 1962 in the New England Journal of Medicine.
Hmm.
And they encouraged us to go back and look at those articles. We did and agreed with them that as serious a problem as nuclear power was, we really needed to shift and focus more on the question of nuclear weapons. This is in 1979, I'm talking about. And the organization grew very rapidly here in the United States and sort of grew into the International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War when Dr. Bernard Lown, one of our key leaders, met with Dr. Evgeny Chazov, a prominent Soviet cardiologist, and they agreed to form an international federation of local national doctors groups who were concerned about the danger of nuclear war.
So that's around 79, you say. And
Yes.
then 80, I think, Reagan comes in and he started talking recklessly about the possibility of using nuclear weapons. And then he made treaties with the Soviet Union to reduce the nuclear weapons. So could you describe what may have changed?
Yeah, I mean, there was a very dramatic shift in U.S. nuclear policy. In the early 1980s, the incoming Reagan administration had the most bellicose policy with regards to nuclear weapons of any president ever. They talked frequently about the possibility of fighting and winning a nuclear war, encouraged people to believe that civil defense was possible, that we could survive a nuclear war and rebuild our country and everything would be okay. And basically, they scared people to death. Um, and that played a very important role in helping to promote the growth of a large movement in the United States, in Europe, even in the Soviet Union, in Japan, Australia. And in 1983 was sort of the turning point. That year, the United States deployed Pershing missiles in Europe with the stated intention of being able to fight and win a nuclear war in Europe. It was a crazy idea. Nuclear war was not survivable, but that was US policy. And we almost had nuclear war that year twice, once in September and again in November. And those real world events, plus the meetings that we've been able to arrange with both Reagan and Gorbachev, and all of the educational work that we were doing, and the huge movement that resulted from that, led to this very abrupt change. Reagan and Gorbachev suddenly got it. And they sat down together and they said together, nuclear war can never be won and it must never be fought. And that joint statement, I believe, was in 1985, just a year and a half, less than 2 years after the near catastrophes in the fall of 1983. And I think it's enormously important for us because it shows how rapidly we can make progress towards changing nuclear policy if we can just get the attention of the leaders and get them to understand the danger of the policies they are currently pursuing.
And one of the events that got people's attention was in New York City, where Central Park had 1 million people. I think it was June of 82.
That's
Um,
right. The largest demonstration in US history, 1 million people demanding an end to the Cold War arms race.
yeah. Now, let's move ahead to the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, ICAN. When did that begin?
That was started in 2007. When the Cold War ended in 1990, that was good. Uh, but the problem is that everyone began to act as though the problem of nuclear war had ended also, and it hadn't. The situation was clearly much safer than it had been just a few years before at the height of the Cold War, but there were still thousands of nuclear warheads, and nobody really wanted to talk about this anymore. Um, the International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War and our US affiliate Physicians for Social Responsibility continue to try to educate people about the ongoing danger. And in 2006, at IPPNW's World Conference in Helsinki, a proposal was made that we launch a new, broader civil society effort an international campaign to abolish nuclear weapons. And IPPNW made the decision to do that. We launched the campaign in Australia the next year, 2007. And it was initially primarily an Australian campaign, but over the next couple of years, it grew internationally, and we set up a new office in Geneva. And I can put forward a call for a new treaty to ban the possession of nuclear weapons, to outlaw their possession, similar to the existing treaties on biological and chemical weapons. And then that treaty, I think, somewhat to our surprise, to our great pleasure, was actually negotiated at the United Nations in 2017 after a series of major international conferences about the medical consequences of nuclear war that moved those negotiations forward.
And it actually passed and got the requisite number of nations, right?
That's right. There was a vote at the UN, and on July 17th, I think, 2017, uh, it passed at the UN by a vote of 122 to 1. Uh, it entered into force in January of 2021 when the 50th country ratified the treaty. That was the provision in the treaty. When 50 countries ratified, it would go into force. And so the treaty's been in force for 4 years. The problem, of course, is that none of the countries which actually have nuclear weapons chose to be part of the negotiations or to this date, join the treaty. And so our attention is now focused primarily on how to use the treaty and the international statement it represents to bring about change in the countries that actually have the weapons. And here in the
Right.
United States, that has been primarily through the Back from the Brink campaign, which we started in 2017, shortly after the treaty was adopted.
All right, I'm
And
going to get to that in a minute, but if first I want to ask you about some movies. In an interview years ago, you talked about the influence on President Reagan of two movies, The Day After and War Games. I want to ask about another movie, the 2023 film Oppenheimer. First, what did you think of the movie itself?
I thought it was a really great movie, but it wasn't the movie that we need to change public policy. It didn't talk about the current danger. It was a movie about what happened in the 1940s and 1950s. It was primarily a movie about Oppenheimer's personal inner struggles. And it was a very good movie, but it really didn't talk about the issue that we face today, which is the growing danger of nuclear war and the urgent need to get rid of these weapons. So perhaps, it drew some attention to the nuclear question, but it certainly has not played and will not play the role that The Day After played. Now, there are some movies in the pipeline which may do that.
Uh-huh.
Uh, a terrific book by a woman named Annie Jacobson called Nuclear War: A Scenario that describes how a nuclear war could take place. After an initial launch by North Korea, it follows the world for the next 70 minutes as events spiral out of control and shows what one scenario leading to nuclear war could be. That book, which is a terrific read, is going to be made into a motion picture as well.
Uh-huh.
Uh, it was recently reported also that, oh dear, I'm blocking out, James Cameron is going to be making a movie about the destruction of Hiroshima.
Wow.
I think will be a very powerful depiction of what nuclear weapons can do. And finally, I have heard that Netflix has optioned the British movie Threads, which was a 1980s sort of UK version of The Day After. And Netflix is planning to make this into a series, which would be
Really?
terrific because it will reach a very broad audience.
Yes.
And all of these developments really are cause for great optimism, I think, because one of the things that's been missing in recent years is this attention to the nuclear danger in the popular culture. And these movies, I think, have the ability to really have a big impact if they are, in fact, made and released.
All right, now let's get back to the Back from the Brink organization in which you're active. Now, people often say well, international law says nuclear weapons must go, but that's impossible because it can't all be done in one giant step. But Back from the Brink has at least four interim steps, and I'd like to ask you about each of them. One was renounce first use.
Stan, if I could just for a second before we get into the interim steps, I
Yeah.
do want to make, I think, a very important point. We do not see these as steps that need to be taken before we get rid of nuclear weapons. We think that the fundamental decision to eliminate nuclear weapons can and must be taken. That these are steps that are meant to be put in place to help drive the process forward. But we can see a very major change in nuclear policy, and I think we need to be appreciative of that. In the 1980s, the Cold War arms race was ended in less than 2 years. The decision to eliminate all nuclear weapons could be taken in a similarly short period of time. And the main thrust of the Back from the Brink campaign is our call on the United States to enter now into negotiations with the other 8 countries that have nuclear weapons to work out the details of verification and enforcement, and most importantly, to negotiate a timetable for eliminating their nuclear weapons. That process will take a few years, but maybe 3 or 4 to actually dismantle the warheads. But that negotiation could take place quickly over a year or two. And it's, I think, a mistake to think of this as a distant future goal. This is an immediate, urgent necessity. We must reach this agreement quickly. Once the decision has been made to enter into those negotiations, the United States can give momentum to that negotiating process by implementing the 4, if you will, interim steps that Back from the Brink is proposing.
Okay. Okay. So the first one of those steps was renounce first use. What is that?
Well, currently the United States has a policy, it reserves the right, if you will, to use nuclear weapons first, even against countries that don't have nuclear weapons. I mean, most of us tend to think that we keep a nuclear arsenal just to be able to retaliate if we're attacked or to deter somebody else from attacking us. But in fact, the United States has very extensive and elaborate plans for nuclear war fighting. And those plans envision the United States starting a nuclear war. We think the US should join several other nuclear powers, India, China in particular, which have an explicit policy that they will not initiate nuclear warfare. And we think the US should urge the other countries which have nuclear weapons that have not adopted such a policy to join us in declaring that policy, which would dramatically decrease the danger of a nuclear war taking place in the few years that it will take us to get rid of the weapons.
All right. The second one is end hair trigger alert. What is that?
Currently, a significant number of US nuclear warheads, several hundred, are mounted on missiles which can be launched in 15 minutes. This is a relic of Cold War conditions uh, and is totally unnecessary. We now have a fleet of submarines which are essentially invulnerable. We don't have to launch our land-based missiles in 15 minutes on warning that the other side has attacked us. We've had many of those warnings. They've all been false. And we have always, at the last minute, stopped the process of launching our arsenal. It is crazy to maintain that kind of a hair trigger situation. If we decide that we're going to destroy the world, we can do it tomorrow. We don't have to do it in 15 minutes. And so we want to get these weapons off hair trigger alert to lessen the chance that they will be launched uh, uh, in essentially accidentally, to lessen the chance that they will be launched as a result of a cyber attack. Um,
Yeah.
these are vulnerable to cyber terrorism at this point.
Gee.
A group somebody could hack into our command and control systems potentially and launch these weapons. And that's a crazy, dangerous situation, and we should end it.
The third one was cancel enhanced weapons. What are enhanced weapons?
The United States is currently has launched a 30-year program, which will cost something between 1.7 and $2 trillion to completely rebuild our nuclear arsenal, every element of it, with new and enhanced weapons. We're going to have new submarines. We're going to have new ground-based missiles. We're going to have new bombers. We're going to have new warheads for all of these systems. And this is not just a replacement. These weapons are all more advanced. They are more usable, which lowers the threshold that we will actually initiate a nuclear war. And it's a terrible diversion of resources, and it's very destabilizing. It is helping to stimulate a global arms race. It's not the US alone that's doing this. The Russians, the Chinese, the British, the French, the Israelis, the Indians, they're all working to enhance their nuclear arsenals. But we are playing a major role driving that process forward. And we don't need to do that. We have enough nuclear weapons right now to destroy the world many times over. We don't need to do this. And by doing it, we are making the situation more dangerous, not safer.
And the last one was end sole authority. What is that?
Well, currently, the President of the United States is able to launch nuclear war all by himself, does not require input from anybody else. And if the president decides to figuratively push the button, there is no one who has legal authority to countermand that order, or even there's no one who is required to sign off on that order. And no one should have the ability to launch nuclear war. No small group of people should. But it's particularly dangerous when that power is vested in one individual. We have had multiple instances where the President of the United States was, for a period of time, deemed by his own administration to be unstable. This happened during the final weeks of the Nixon presidency when President Nixon was drunk much of the time. It happened during the last weeks of the first Trump administration when Trump was trying to overthrow the US government. And there's no reason to have this kind of profound instability built into the system. There should be some check on the president's ability to take this most catastrophic decision. The Constitution says that only Congress should be able to declare war. And launching a nuclear attack is certainly an act of war. There needs to be some check on that power. The president shouldn't be able to do this alone.
Well, this has been great, and I'm sure you'll be getting into a lot of this on, I think it's Thursday, August 7th. Let's just remind folks that the event will be at 11 a.m. in the morning at the Tort Museum in Winsted, Connecticut. By the way, that's a museum that was founded by Ralph Nader. So come to the talk and then visit this very attractive museum. Its site is tortmuseum.org. Thank you, Dr. Ira Helfand.
Thanks, Stanley. Pleasure talking with you today.
This is now effectively the tomb of the Anas Arafat family. 13 family members, including his mother and father, are dead in this rubble. The Israelis bombed the area on July 14th. No one had the equipment to take out the bodies for burial. It's not clear if the Israeli overlords would even permit it. There have been 3 articles in the Israeli paper Haaretz about this crime. In the last one, on the 21st of July, there was this sentence: "To this day, the IDF hasn't said why it bombed the Arafat home or why it barred rescue workers from coming." After several days of deep depression, Anas Arafat posted this video and wrote this: "After a break from work due to the recent events that happened to my family, yesterday we provided clothing for displaced children inside the camps in Gaza City." For more about this, see peace.org. Now, more about the starvation and mass murder through starvation that Israel is using on the Palestinian population in Gaza in its program to deport or murder the entire Palestinian Gaza population. This startling photo was issued, or rather used, in the paper The Daily Express of England. It's, of course, one of many such photos, but what's noteworthy is the Daily Express is a paper on the political right. We link to the article in our Palestine-Israel archive, or just use this QR code to get to the Daily Express article. And this terrible headline: Dr. Abu Safia is supposed to subsist on 2 spoonfuls of rice a day. Dr. Safia directed the Kamal Adwan Hospital and has been tortured in Israeli captivity for 7 months. You remember that photo of him walking by himself in the rubble outside the hospital, all alone, going towards the Israeli tank. The Israelis call this civilian doctor an unlawful combatant. And by proclaiming these magic words, they believe they now have the power to torture him any way they like. Ending with some bravery, the Handala, the most recent boat of the Gaza Freedom Flotilla, is en route to Gaza.
Dear President Trump and the U.S. government, we are 6 of the 7 U.S. citizens aboard the Freedom Flotilla Coalition boat Handala, an unarmed civilian vessel carrying humanitarian aid to the Palestinian people in Gaza, with food, medicine, and baby formula for the children who are deliberately being starved.
As a U.S. and Israeli citizen, I am exercising my right, our moral duty, to respond when our government enables atrocities. The Israeli blockade is illegal. It is not a security measure. It is a tool of collective punishment and ethnic cleansing and genocide.
We're counting on you, Trump. While the U.S. citizens struggle to survive, our tax dollars are going toward Israel's endless genocide. Protect your legacy today. Stop enabling Israel and ensure our safe passage.
We call on the U.S. government to stop funding and shielding Israel's crimes. We also call on U.S. media to stop repeating government talking points and start reporting the truth. That Israel has killed and maimed tens of thousands of Palestinian children and is now deliberately starving babies to death. The world is watching in silence.
Israel is threatening to attack us. We are not the threat. The threat is a world where killing children is normalized, where starving civilians is accepted, where denying an entire people their human rights is justified, and those who act in the name of humanity are attacked, jailed, or killed.
If anything happens to us, it will be on the hands of those who armed, funded, and politically protected the apartheid regime doing the killing. We are acting with conscience. It's time our government did the same.
From the U.S. citizens aboard the
Freedom Flotilla
The ship.
Handala.
That's our program for today. See you next week. I'm Stanley Heller for the Struggle Video News.